Welcome back to Inside Health Education. This is your host, Enrique Hasso, the Associate Director of the Texas Health Education Service at the TMDSAS office in Austin, Texas. Today, I'm really honored to be joined by Mr. Matthew Meeks. And before we get to your title, I just want to make a quick announcement for a lot of our listeners who might not be aware. Our previous Executive Director, Dr. Scott Wright, retired in December, and we'd like to wish him all the best on his retirement. And in that announcement, I'd like to introduce Mr. Matthew Meeks, our new Executive Director for the Texas Health Education Service.
Well, thank you, Enrique. It's good to be here. Thank you.
All right. Well, we have quite a few things that we'd like to do to introduce you to our listeners and to all of our pre-health community that listen. But first off, I'd like to have you reintroduce yourself. You've definitely been on the podcast before, but now that you are in this role, I'd like to offer you the opportunity to tell us a little bit about who you are.
All right. Well, thank you, Enrique. Well, I'm from the Dallas-Fort Worth area. I got my undergraduate and master's degrees from Dallas-Baptist University. I studied history and education, higher education, instruction, and I'm currently in my final year at a doctoral program at Vanderbilt University, Peabody College, studying leadership and learning. So I'm very excited about working through that program and nearly being done at the dissertation phase. So hopefully be through that in the next year or so. And I've been in higher education for about 17 years, and I've worked at 5 institutions of higher education in both public and private institutions. And been at TMDSAS for about 3.5 years now. And
wow, time flies, because that's about the time that we first interviewed you on the podcast.
Wow, it's been 3.5 years ago. Wow.
Awesome. Well, we're so excited to have you. And we honestly could not ask for a better person to lead our organization, especially during such a difficult time. You and I have already worked together for 3.5 years. And so it really is a treat to get to work with you. And I'm really excited for all of the amazing things and all the great work that we have ahead for ourselves.
Wow, Enrique, those are tall words. I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're essentially being thrown into the fire in this role right now, Matthew, because of the time that we're living in with the effects of the COVID pandemic. But can you tell us a little bit about some of your hobbies, maybe some of the things that you enjoy?
Well, it's interesting. Before the pandemic started, I was in Ecuador, and it was just at the beginning of March. I got back just a few days before the lockdown. But travel is my favorite hobby. That's sort of, I have been traveling most of my life. In fact, just hit 30 countries when I was in Kuwait most recently. And that has been one of the most important and valuable things to me, and has taught me to appreciate and value other perspectives that are different from my own, and to be challenged by their ideas. And so that's been something that I've engaged in most of my life. My grandparents lived in Indonesia and Southeast Asia, and my parents were there for a very short time. And so I sort of grew up with that as part of my pedigree, and then just in my teenage years began to sort of travel on different mission work, and I've just kind of continued that practice to this day. And so before going to Ecuador recently, I was in the Middle East and got to develop a lot of relationships there in Jordan and Kuwait. And so that's just something that I'll continue to do throughout the course of my life. I think it's a way to, again, better understand different perspectives, but then also just to be challenged cognitively and, intellectually and spiritually, in so many other ways that it challenges me. And so that's been a very rewarding experience over the years.
Yeah, and you always have the best photos to share during our staff meetings. Just some amazing, landscapes of some of the great places that you've been visiting.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I like to take pictures. I'm not a very good photographer, but from time to time, I just so happen by chance to take a good shot here and there. So
awesome. So, can you tell us, what does it mean to have an executive director? What does that role look like?
Well, I kind of see myself as one who, so many of the individuals who have worked at the Health Education Service, TMDSAS, and JAMP have been there for quite a long time. I mean, you've been with the Health Education Service for 10 years and JAMP
Calling me
before
out
that.
right out the bat.
Calling you out. And you've done amazing work. Paul has been with JAMP for nearly 2 decades, since I believe 2002, 2003. And he has led that organization with a lot of respect and has earned the respect of his colleagues throughout the state. And so I kind of, my goal is to build a strong leadership team and to support the individuals who have been here for a long time and who have done amazing work and have served the state well over the years. And so that's a huge opportunity for me, right? Just right there and supporting the work that you all do. But then also, the executive director is responsible for the communications component. That's the Apply magazine and some of the other auxiliary functions of the department. But then also, building a cohesive strategic plan moving into the future. And we have our challenges. There are things that, as we look into the future with strategic foresight, we see that there's a lot of opportunity for us. There's a lot of things that we could do to improve the organization and the services that we provide the state of Texas. And that's exactly what we're going to do. Is we're going to take a look at these opportunities and build a plan to meet it.
Awesome. So what does it mean to applicants, to advisors or member institutions, just the general pre-health community? What does it mean to them that we have a new executive director?
Well, and this is one of the other things I was going to mention before is that, organizational improvement is critical here. And if we're going to meet the demands, as we talked about before, of the future, that are going to be presented to us in the future, we have to become practitioners of data analysis. And how do we use feedback and information to improve and to inform our practice? And that's what we're going to be taking a look at. And so, we do this by using applicant surveys and advisor surveys and institutional surveys. But then also the idea is treating every interaction with our applicants, every interaction with our member institutions and our advisors throughout the state as an opportunity for feedback. And so we have developed lots of different ways of gathering and collecting this feedback, analyzing the feedback, and then determining ways for it to inform our daily practices. And so that's what I think it means for participating schools, advisors, and applicants is that we're going to create systems whereby we listen and engage with them and then use this information to better serve the community.
So, yeah, and if I could expand on that, because I think it's something that's really interesting, and at least for me and for any advisor that's listening as well, the application handbook in the past couple of years has really undergone a significant facelift. Mm-hmm. It's been rebuilt from the ground up. And that's actually in direct response to a lot of the feedback that you're mentioning, not just from applicants, but also from advisors and our member institutions. Do you mind talking a little bit about that and how that process worked?
Absolutely. And that's a great example. And I'm glad you brought it up. We have a chief editor of the handbook, Nicole Castillo, and she's been with TMDSAS for about 2.5 years. And when she came on board, she has a background in education and policy studies and was a teacher for a long time. And it's kind of interesting. It was right about that time when we sort of made that shift into this, the practice of soliciting feedback and treating all communication within the organization as an opportunity to collect and analyze data. And so Nicole started to analyze the communications that we were receiving on the phone, the communications that we were engaging in with applicants on the phones and through email. And instead of printing the handbook each year, we turned it into a fully digital piece, and we updated it once a week. So as data was coming in, as we were getting feedback from applicants in the pre-health community on, issues or concerns or even recommendations for improvement, we were making those changes weekly and republishing the documents. So that's just one of the ways that we've, taken that we're taking feedback to improve a practice.
Yeah, thank you. Before we dig into the COVID-19 coverage, I'd like to ask you the highs and lows of this job, besides putting me in both of those categories and having to work with me. Can you tell us what you're most excited for and what you perceive to be your biggest challenge in this role?
I am most excited about working with the leadership team and the staff throughout the organization. We have some of the most amazing individuals I've ever worked with, and we are so blessed. I mean, I could not imagine facing what we're facing right now in this crisis without the incredible team that we have here throughout the department. I mean, we spend so much time together on Zoom these days, and I'm just always so impressed by the level of commitment and determination and the level of service that each one of our staff members desire to provide the community. And so that's just been a very humbling experience for me. So I'm so very proud of the group. I'm excited about that. And I'm excited about working with our member institutions. Even in this time, I see how each one of them have responded differently and how they have their hearts in it. They want to do the right thing for the community, and so that's been a very rewarding experience. And then also with our advisors. I mean, we have our advisors are on the front lines, and so we continue to work with them and get to know them. At the different conferences, I've gotten the opportunity to sit down with many of them one-on-one over the years. And so I think just looking at all of our constituencies and all the opportunities, it's been a very rewarding experience, and I'm very excited about engaging on a deeper level.
What do you perceive to be your biggest challenge in this role?
Yeah, the challenge right now has been, obviously it goes without saying, the COVID-19 pandemic. How are we as a community going to respond to the situation that we're in? And so that right now is the biggest challenge. I started the position right in the middle of it. And so, there's a lot of questions that are going to be asked of us. The community is sort of looking to TMDSAS, to the Health Education Service, and to our member institutions for direction and guidance. And so I think it's ensuring that we are staying on the ball with that, and that we're making sure to be very responsive to the questions and concerns of the community.
Yeah. And that's a great segue for us to get talking on the topic of how TMDSAS is helping students and advisors and just overall the whole pre-health community in engaging them and how the process is essentially shifting due to COVID-19 pandemic. Can you tell us what TMDSAS has done so far?
The challenge here has been reassessing the situation almost on a daily basis to better understand what our options are and what the best strategies are for moving forward. And so that's generally what we've done. We are taking feedback from the pre-health community, be it advisors from the undergraduate institutions or applicants to understand their concerns and understand their angst and how can we respond as a community to those concerns. And so that's really what we've started with at this point. We have been able to meet with our institutions at least once a week. We've started that process in the past week, and so that's going to be important moving forward. We've launched a newsroom, the Health Education Service newsroom, and on there we've been able to facilitate discussion and really engage in some sense giving with the applicants and the undergraduate institutions on the different things that we're working on moving forward to accommodate the pre-health community in this time. But also I know that you've continued to work on the Facebook groups, and there's a lot of engagement going on there. And then just taking a look at what are the policies that we can update or change to better serve applicants during this time of change and uncertainty.
Could you tell us some examples from there? I know that there have been some changes to how online courses and how those are processed through TMDSAS now.
Yeah, so the online courses are, most of our institutions will take online courses anyway, but the concern from the community has been, many of our courses that were physical in-person courses have transitioned to an online format. Will these courses still be acceptable? Will they be acceptable for the spring and summer terms. And I think we were able to get our institutions behind a policy to support that. There's obviously all kinds of concerns with the MCAT and DAT test cancellations, and we continue to work with AAMC on that. And at this point, nobody knows how long that's going to go. Will the cancellations, so far they've been through the month of April. Will they go into May or June? At this point, we're not sure. We can only guess, right? We can only assume that may be the case, but we're continuing to monitor the situation there and formulate a response as we see fit. And then also, I know that there's been question about the pass fail courses. Will those courses count towards the prescribed coursework and the education requirements? And we're hoping to make some announcements on that in the coming days.
Great. And where can people stay up to date with all of the changes to these policies and procedures?
Well, you can go to the TMDSAS website and you'll see a banner there for the Health Education Service newsroom, or you can just go to TXHES.com/newsroom for the latest updates there as well.
So what can applicants do to prepare for EY 2021? It's clearly not the same as a typical application cycle, but it's still an application cycle, and there are quite a few things that applicants need to do to prepare.
Well, this is where we just have to sort of tell it like it is. I mean, the message here is to press on. Do what you can right now to continue to prepare for a career as an independent practitioner. This isn't the first battle that you'll face. This isn't the first major test. Yeah, it is unprecedented. Yes, none of us have ever lived through a time such as this one. But the idea is that we have to continue to engage and continue to find ways to stay involved and engaged in preparation for the application cycle and for professional school. And so, I think that the questions the schools are asking and what they're looking for in candidates is, they want to see resiliency and creativity in this time. So what are the things that applicants are doing to continue to press into creativity, but then also to display a level of resiliency?
Earlier when we had our meeting, when we had a leadership meeting today, we'd actually talked about how students have to keep their foot on the pedal and continuing forward. And I think, and I get on the soapbox almost every episode of the podcast, but I think when you look at the core competencies that the medical schools are looking at, when you're looking at the competencies that the dental schools are looking at and the ones that the veterinary schools are assessing, it really, there are just so many things that there's so many opportunities for students to shine right now.
Right.
And we're seeing, Facebook groups popping up about how people can help their neighbors. There are folks who are signing up to, lead a drive to create face masks for their neighbors. Now that, as of the time of this recording, it is now highly recommended by the CDC that everybody wear face masks whenever they leave their home. There's so many opportunities, and it really comes down to that creativity that you mentioned and other opportunities for students to exercise those core competencies that the schools are looking for. So, yeah, I think it's right on target.
Yeah, again, just as you said, the message is to press on, and that's what we're being charged with is, what are our opportunities?
Yeah, excellent. So what considerations are the TMDSAS participating institutions taking right now so that applicants during this application cycle aren't disadvantaged by the situation?
So we are looking at a couple of different options. I mean, one idea is that applications will not be transmitted until later into the application cycle. And right now we're looking at June 1st. And so essentially what that means is that TMDSAS would receive the applications, but wouldn't be transmitting the applications to the institutions until at least 30 days after the application starts. And that's kind of, right now we're hoping that MCAT and DAT test dates open up and that, that would level the playing field just a little bit. But, we're gonna continue working with our member institutions on a weekly or biweekly basis, and we're going to continue to assess the situation. I mean, right now, that's kind of the best we can do. Is we're taking feedback from the community on their concerns and questions, and we're bringing that feedback before our member institutions, and we will be responding to those concerns as often and consistently as possible.
Awesome. So what can students expect from TMDSAS right now? Or not just students, but what can the entire pre-health community expect from TMDSAS right now?
It's critical that they know that we're listening, and I know I've said this before a few times, but I think that there's this idea that large organizations, people wonder, are they listening? And the message right now is we hear you, we're listening. We know that there are concerns, and we know that there are fears, there's confusion. But the thing that I love about this organization, and I love about the member institutions throughout the state of Texas, is that they want what's best for the students. They want what's best for the state. And that's exactly it. We are listening to the concerns. We are listening to the feedback, and don't hesitate to share with us, what's on your mind. And we're going to continue to listen and respond in the days to come.
So it sounds like the timeline for TMDSAS has also been altered to mitigate any issues that students are having in terms of how the application works this year. Would you mind walking us through some of the dates?
Absolutely. And I'll just mention before I do that we are taking a look at the timeline. We'll continue to assess the situation. And so the timeline still is subject to change. But at this point, we're going to open May 1, just as scheduled. We'll begin transmitting applications on June 1st. And then on November 15th, that'll be the deadline for test scores and for letters of evaluation. And then at this point, the match will occur in March as opposed to February.
Okay. Those are quite a few changes. So anybody listening who wants to follow along, we have included a link to the new application timeline in the description of this episode, so you can see all of the dates that have been affected by the change. Thank you. So just a quick recap for applicants who are applying in EY 2021. We do want to remind you that TMDSAS has a link to the newsroom where we are collecting any updates affecting the application cycle, which includes the new timeline that has expanded the overall application season. We've also included any updates from participating schools and policy changes from TMDSAS and the TMDSAS schools in terms of policies and procedures that they've all agreed on. Beyond that, you just have to keep going down the same road that you were already going down. You are still moving full speed ahead down this journey. And for those of you who are, seeing the situation that's going on right now and are really invigorated and still impassioned to pursue this pathway, we need you more than ever. And so we are definitely here to help you.
Yeah, and that's the message. If you're looking for a career in medicine or veterinary medicine or dentistry, we have the resources, and we're working on more to support you in this important journey that you're on.
Excellent. Do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just close with a little sense giving and dealing with the crisis that we're in by echoing the words of Queen Elizabeth, who addressed England and the Commonwealth in a very moving speech yesterday. She said, "While we have faced challenges before, this one is different. This time we join with all nations across the globe in a common endeavor, using the great advances of science and our instinctive compassion to heal. We will succeed, and that success will belong to every one of us." And I'd just like to add to that message for our community of applicants to professional school, the pre-health community, and our member institutions that this is what we're called to. This is our mission, compassion and healing. So the challenge is to reframe the circumstance that we find ourselves in and to think of it like this: how can I, in my current situation, in this dilemma, no matter what the situation looks like, whether you are with your family or your roommates, or even if you're in total isolation, how can you continue to do the work of bringing healing and compassion? And I think that's the question that's being asked of all of us. But even more so, if medicine or dentistry or veterinary medicine is in your future, and may we respond accordingly.
Powerful words. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
We hope that this conversation with our new Executive Director of the Texas Health Education Service, Mr. Matthew Meeks, helps you with making the best decisions possible for your application this cycle. And on behalf of TMDSAS and the Texas Health Education Service, we'd like to wish all the best of luck and send all of our best wishes to each of you as we go through this crisis and this application cycle together. That's it for today. We'll talk to you later.
This is MedEd Media.